Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to attend this panel. I know this is the last session. I hope we'll try to make this as exciting as possible. To join me on this panel, we have Vishram, Mishra, co-founder and CEO of MicroSec Singapore. Vishram is a certified information security profession and has a passion for developing secured protocol for wireless communication. Thank you, Vishram. And to join us on this panel as well is Franck Martin. Franck is the Senior MCU Marketing and Application Manager, Southeast Asia region for STMicroelectronics. Franck started his career in 1999 at Philips Semiconductor in Belgium, developing the first USB device and DVD silicon. Somebody else is going to join us in this panel, in the middle of this panel. The reason is that he's stuck in the traffic because there's a very heavy rain and traffic jam in ECP. The person who's joining us is Neville Burdan, who is the GM for Dynamic Data Singapore. And Neville is responsible for spearheading the company security business unit and execution and strategy for the solution portfolio that support client in assessing, planning, and operating the environment. Okay, thank you, panelists, for spending the time here with us. We have spent 2 days being excited by many wonderful technology in regards to IoT. Maybe just to set the scene broadly, is maybe for Franck and Vishram, you can share with us what are the IoT threats that you are concerned about. Franck, do you want to start first?
Well, yes. So good afternoon, everyone. Maybe first one just a quick thing. It's amazing to see that, parallel to this IoT Asia show, there is at the moment the Asia Black Hat happening at the Marina Basin, right? That is going to end up tomorrow, right? And this is showing also how much this is, these security aspects are growing in terms of concerns and interest. And I think that, not talking too much about these black hat things, right? But there is a strong link with Singapore also, because I understood that they are basically pushing for free scholarship for the university or the initiatives for education that these guys are pushing to Singapore for every researchers and student that would be following these courses and developing solutions that should be addressing some of the main concerns from Singapore state as far as the security is concerned. So that's clearly one point. Now, maybe just as a broad introduction, let's share maybe some of the what is today understood as the main or the top obstacle to the implementation of IoT solution, right? There are different research reports that are available out there, and some of them are claiming that only up to 10% of the IoT objects that are today in the market are basically having the right level of security. So it doesn't mean that this object doesn't have any security, but it means that the way the security is implemented is not addressing what is required to protect appropriately the assets that are going with this device. So that's one thing. Then in terms of obstacle, what we see is that there are basically three main categories. One of them is for IoT implementation, right? So of course, so many companies today are very seriously trying to project themselves to this digital transformation, right? Because otherwise they will be dying in the next 1 to 3 years, right? And that is also valid for big companies, big MNCs. Now, some of the major obstacles are, for one part, coming from the fact that many products are from, let's say, some legacy implementation. And this is a challenge, right, to move to IoT. Another aspect is that there is a recognized lack of knowledge or skills from these different companies to be able to address and implement, properly IoT implementation. And of course, the last one is security. Security is accounting for nearly 30% in terms of major obstacle for IoT implementation. Now, in these 30%, almost, yes, 1/3 equally is being spread between privacy, right? How do you protect the privacy of the data and the informations that are into these IoT objects, no matter what they are? Then, of course, the security, right? How to protect these as an asset, right? And the last one is how to have proper implementation in terms of quality and integrity of the data, right? Now, this is just to bring a little bit of information. Now, you were asking, right? Also, if we have example to illustrate what these IoT security breach or problems are today in the market. So there are numerous of them, right? So some of them are very well known. For instance, if I take the segment of the smart home, right? There was an interesting one, this smart fridge from Samsung that was basically, that is working with an app, right, that you can have on your phone, and basically to be able to interact with the fridge to do whatever smartness is there, right, you have to provide your Gmail information. And this Gmail information remains open in the fridge. So now any hacker that would be tapping onto the network would be able to access to your Gmail information. And then from there, you know, anything can happen. So that's one. Another one
Anybody
was...
from Samsung here?
But it's public, so I'm sure that they have fixed the problem by now.
Let them have the chance to speak if they are here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another one is everyone has heard about Nest, right? That was acquired a few years back by Google, right, for the thermostat at home. So this one also, there was a big breach. Some hackers were able basically to hack the device using the design firmware upgrade of the Nest thermostat, and putting, let's say, unsigned code that was, being executed at the time of boot. And that from that point onwards, you can basically have access and monitor what is going on in the house, whether the people are there or not. So that means, okay, you can do that, of course, remotely. So you can plan to break in the house as well, right? And of course, they are also able to scrutinize, monitor what are the data that are going inside the private network of the home. So that's for the smart home. For the smart city example, there was this interesting case that was reported from some security researchers from the Michigan University that were basically able, just with a laptop, to hack the traffic light of a city and take control over it, and then able to change the state of the traffic light. So you can imagine the kind of problem that this could generate. Then the smart meter, which is very much at the center of many smart city implementation, is something which was also hacked in a big way in Spain, which has largely deployed these smart meters, and people were able, by this hacking mechanism, to cut the energy bill of the meter, right? And maybe like one more example, on the smart driving or in the automotive industry, there is this Tesla model, the S model, that was also, I think it was in September last year that they reported that, hackers were able to basically hack the device. They didn't provide much details, of course, but it means that more and more of these IoT objects will be, of course, using internet, and by multiplying these numbers of internet connectivity, you are also opening up many windows and potential breach to get to these devices.
Thank you, Frank. Before I pass it to Vishram, just want to welcome Neville.
Oh,
Finally, I've reached here. I'll let you take a breath first before I ask you a question. The question I'm asking the panel is to share with us, the people here, what are the threats out there in regards to IoT? Vishram, do you want to start? No?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Loy, for this opportunity to bring all the information in the public here to basically tell them what's happening in the security world. So, a question that is normally asked: why? Why do we need security? So, for example, one of our customers basically asked, "Why do I need to make my temperature, humidity data secure in my home? Nobody cares about it. Why should I make my energy meter reading secure? What is the reason behind it?" So it's just not about the data. For you, it's just a data, but for an attacker, it's an information. He can deduce whether how many people are inside your home. Worse, if your kids are inside your home or away. So maybe it's just a data for you, but for an attacker, it's a important information that they can deduce. Worst of the attacks are not directly on the technology itself. It's on the people. And most of the time, for example, if you look into the Apple ID attack, which happened, which is basically part of cyber attack, happened on the basis of the information that is revealed by a person itself. So 90% of the attack that you're going to see are either insider job or either someone reveals some information from some area. Now, coming to the IoT sector, for example, if you look into one of the world's worst disaster that is caused by an attack is Stuxnet. How many of you guys heard about Stuxnet here? So, guys who don't know about Stuxnet, is basically, it was a malware which was introduced into the Siemens PLC software to overrun the centrifuges, which are meant for nuclear refining purposes. So Iran was basically using those centrifuges to refine their nuclear materials. And this malware was actually overturning the centrifuges to run from 450 RPM to over 1,000 RPM, and it was giving a falsified information in front of the software, which in turn resulted in tearing apart the whole centrifuge. This was the world's worst disaster caused by an attack. So when you think about just temperature humidity data, it's just not limited to that. It's also going into the industries, specifically targeting PLCs, which are not designed for a human or consumer use, which were specifically designed for a particular industry use. Apart from that, if you guys have a cell phone right now, you can just Google something called an InSecCam, InSecCam. You can see at least 5% of the world's IP cam online on that website. Yeah, it's true, open. It may be your own house. The reason because most of your IP cams, they come with default passwords and username, but you don't change it. And the worst part is the industry who's providing, the manufacturer who's providing those IP cams.
It's good that people are looking at us on the internet.
Yeah. So the thing is,
Surprise.
no, they need to be frightened to understand the intricacies here, what they're dealing with. You're bringing technology into your home, but you need to understand what it also brings apart from just user friendliness. It also brings something like Trojan. Like what did the guys did. They bring a Trojan horse. You are bringing the same thing. You're bringing vulnerabilities inside your home. Similarly, if you're going with any other technology, like for example, you're going to use any IoT device, you're just going to use it because it looks friendly, or you're going to buy some robots which are available online, or you're going to buy an autonomous car. Maybe in future, like within 10 years, is going to be realized by a lot of other companies. You have to first think about how secure that is. Can someone just hack those cars? It has been shown a lot of times that autonomous car, or a normal car even, which has electronic braking, can be used to brake instantaneously, causing an accident. Worst of all, GPS data, which are used for driving, not just cars, even guiding missiles or your drones, have been led with a misled information. The US drone, Predator 2, was brought down in Pakistan just by giving a falsified information on the GPS. These are the real scenarios. These are not just, we're not talking about future scenario right now. These are just real scenario which has happened. So when we talk about security, it's just not limited to your home. It's limited to industry. It's limited to the defense. It's going out everywhere. Question comes in, how do we protect it? As a consumer, you have to actually force the industry provider, dude, stop it. I need TLS 1.2 compliance system. I'm not going to buy it.
Vikram, can I just pause you for a while?
Yes.
I will go into in terms of the prevention detection later.
Yes. Oh, okay,
Is that
good.
all right with you?
Good. Oh, sorry. Then I'll come later. Okay. So, apart from that, the other scenarios that you can actually think about is if you're operating an industry here, and you are going to use sensors just to actually bring more productivity into your system, you have to actually think about security itself. For example, one of our customer is a European customer, and they do something called as building construction monitoring. So they deploy sensors onto the walls, the concrete walls, and they measure temperature, humidity to predict how much the wall has been realized, so that they can build a second floor and third floor and so on. And if someone misinterpret the information, or someone actually did a session hijacking and send a wrong information, maybe your first floor wasn't ready and you built second floor, then third floor and so on, when the people moved in and the whole building just collapsed there. And these are the realistic informations. This is really happening right now. So with that, I'll pass the information to Neville.
Thank you,
here.
Vikram. Neville, welcome back.
Thank you.
Do you have any view in regards to what are the threats out there in regards to IoT?
Sorry I'm late. Weather in Singapore delays things on highways here. So we need a bit of Internet of Things data for the highways, or maybe the drivers. I just want to put one more, because you've covered a lot here. And I think the piece that we all need is perspective. What are you trying to do? Are you an enterprise? Are you a person that is a data provider, or are you a consumer of IoT? So from an enterprise point of view, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and then what is it that you're trying to protect? And most of the IoT systems today, whether they're built into SCADA systems like operational technology or sensing data, what we're traditionally doing right now is securing that like an enterprise, keeping it secure, knowing that it's a trusted source. But when we get out into a data provider, how do you maintain those devices and their identity and their trust that they are providing the right data and not hijacked by that, GPS hijacking or the likes? And then finally, as a consumer, what is it that you need to do to ask for correct data? Now, consumer could be another enterprise consuming sensory data around. How do you know it's real? Or, as a consumer, are my devices out there right? And as a consumer, I shouldn't expect to know that. I should trust. So what is, and that's an issue for IoT today, what is the mechanism of trust that's inherent in these systems today, right?
This will be the next question I will ask.
There you go. Lead in. Back to you.
Thank you. The purpose of this panel is to have a discussion. So I encourage anyone who has any question to raise your hand, and we'll have mic over to you and you can ask your question. Okay, so I will ask the next question as you think about the question you want to ask. And we hear a lot of scare story in regards to cyber. Thank you, Vikram, and then thank you, everyone. Can I just take a step back and look at things in perspective? Because accident happen. A lot of things in life, there's always a risk, basically. Are we overstating the risk in regards to IoT? Maybe I can start with Franck.
Overstating the risk, I think we are always trying to make things, we are trying to anticipate, right? What could be or what could go wrong. So overstating the risk, I don't think so, because through the numerous examples that we have already shared and mentioned, and there could be not maybe thousands, but nearly thousands of them extra, right? That would be even more emphasizing how much these security problems are there, and even more looking forward to the deployment, the massive deployment of these IoT wave, no matter if it's 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billions, whatever. So I come back to your point, Neville, saying that it would be also maybe interesting to, for guys like us who are, let's say, IoT at different level, provider of the solution, to educate the customers and help them to understand what is the right level of security that they have to bring to the device. Because the first thing that while you make a development of a device, right, the first thing you have to ask yourself, say, what is the asset that I'm willing to protect? What is its value? And what is the appropriate security strategy implementation that I will put to control, or let's say, reduce the risk of being, let's say, hacked, or yeah, I mean, to have my device hacked, right?
So can I maybe phrase this question another way? I'm a consumer. I buy television, I buy refrigerator. I would expect them to be, when I buy them for refrigerator, I expect that the rest of the security should be built inside there. Why is it that security has not been built inside all the devices that we have at the moment? What is the issue here at the moment?
So we can build cars that will absolutely stop people from being killed on the roads. We can do that. Why do we have people dying? And the reason being, it's about appropriate level of security and risk and business risk. Speed to market, functionality for the fridge versus what am I going to miss out, or what is the risk of being hijacked. I think we're going to get to a point though, we had very complex security devices, firewalls, next-gen IPS for an enterprise. When we're at IoT, we're at very low cost. And Frank, you may want to comment, what is the level of trust of those devices and how do we put kill switches into them, right? So if I don't trust it, how do I get rid of it? Because at the moment, we're building things like an enterprise, putting them out as IoT. The internet founder basically said, stop putting rubbish on my internet the other day. So we're putting things out there that we can't manage or can't kill. And that's what we need to end up in a point where, as a consumer, if we know it's compromised, we know it's killed. It's off, it's gone. And therefore, I'll go back and get a new one, I'll get a whatever, because we're getting down to the point where these are cents in the dollar. Yep. They're not high net worth devices.
So just to interrupt is that, so we have a competing interest in terms of convenience, cost, and innovation as well. So Vikram, do you have any view in terms of how do a manufacturer actually deal with this competing interest?
Okay, as said by Neville, that it's mostly cost. It is true. Then there's also time to market. Your internet has 20 years of evolution, but when you think about IoT, when it started evolving, like last 2 or 3 years, just you now have like more than 5 billion of devices. So one thing is time to market, because security takes time to build into a product. It's not easy. Second, of course, cost. The question comes in, if you're going to buy a refrigerator of $1,000, and then another refrigerator which is secured for $1.5K, $1,500, which one are you going to choose? By default, half of you will choose, or more than half will choose 1,000 because it's cheap. So the concern here is, how much do you yourself care about security? The manufacturer will provide security given that consumer is willing to pay for it.
If I may, I have one point here. I think it's not just about the... it's not just about the end user. It's also about the manufacturer. Providing the right security level in terms of authentication, okay, branding, right? If it's not there, then you take or accept the risk that somebody can counterfeit your product. That will basically, impact your branding, right? And then if somebody can make a clone of your device and sell it instead of you, right? This is also going to have an impact on your bottom line, right? So these concerns about security is very much true for the end user, but it's also true from the other side of the chain, and that means that security has to be thought with all the stakeholders into consideration. Because
can I say something here?
Why don't we let Neville say it?
Yep. I was just going to follow on from Frank. My belief is we've bolted security on top of things today. Now we have to start thinking about IoT. It's baked in. It's in the silicon. It's from that level up that we actually have to take a reverse look because of the cost of the device. Because IoT, what's the difference between IoT and an operating system and a big system? And really it's cost and complexity. So we get these things down. Let's bake the security in from floor one, not bolt it on top and try and put a shield around it, because someone's always going to find a way to get through that shield.
I will ask something about security by design later, but I'll let Vikram answer.
Okay, so as Frank said, it's appropriate. I won't disagree with that, but it's only one phase. having consumer security is different from the product security itself. Product replication, software replication, or making sure that your software is authenticated is another part of the story. Because here, an organization or the industry or the company who is providing software has to make sure that the software is not replicated. For example, if you're going to buy a Word, Office, or operating system, you have to make sure that the company has to make sure that no one can actually pirate it or is authenticated and other things. But the other comes in the consumer security. The person who's using that product. Should the company be aware of the implications that comes out of compromising the consumer security? Why should a company invest, or a product manufacturer should invest into the consumer security?
Can I say something? Because they care for the customer? Is that a possible reason?
Okay, not reality. The reason because it's true. It's true.
Really?
Industry in reality care only for profit. That is the reality. It's the government. It's the government which actually regulates security.
That's an interesting point.
Yes.
It's the government, and not just government. If you have a regulatory committee, when you try to be, for example, in Europe, it's a ETSI. In US, it's a NIST. And in Singapore, we have ST18 regulatory committee, which is coming into form the cybersecurity standard. Without that, no one will actually go for a security in terms of providing consumer security. You have to think about how is industry going to make money, and that's what in reality they care about, and that's where the security companies like us come into the picture.
Good, good. Do we have any manufacturer here or any company who wants to have a robot? Robot on what Vishram said? This is your moment. Okay, we don't have. It's all right, never mind. I shall leave this topic aside for now. Let's go to security by design, that what Neville talked about. And I strongly believe that security design is a way forward. And I think that increasingly, everywhere you go, from the government to the private sector, everybody is talking about security by design. Just want to get this panel thought in terms of how to implement security by design. Because a lot of time you find that it's easy to say security by design, but actually, how do you implement it in a practical way? Franck, since you come from a manufacturing company.
Yeah. Do you like lasagna?
Not really.
No? Layer cake?
Yes.
So this is the same thing.
Good.
So we start from the very bottom part, right, with the silicon device. So this silicon device, they are actually well-known, well-deployed, dedicated silicon devices meant to provide these security features, right? So, when it comes to banking, actually, this IoT industry is trying to somehow trickle down or inherit from the known segment like banking, ID, transport, where security has been the primary concern right from the beginning, right? Because you have to provide such things. So now they are basically we are trying to push and let's say, lift up the security level by importing these, bringing these devices that are meant to provide, to authentify the device in a very secure way. And I come back to your point, which is from the semiconductor industry, there are very secret manufacturing process that are used exclusively for these devices in order to make sure that they are tamper-proof, that you have to put on the table probably $1 million or $2 million in order for you to break that device. And even in the case you manage to break something, then the device will be just dead. So that's one. But then it's not just about the silicon level, because from the silicon level, you move to the board level or to the PCBA level, where here also you have to have some specific design implementation in order to make sure that nobody can try to hijack the device by opening up the casing and then trying to do some probing and capturing data and so on and so forth. And then you move to the next level, which is when the device gets connected to the network, what is the software that is used, what is the authentication server device mechanism and all. So it's really like, you have to think of addressing each and every one of these different layers if you really want to provide a foolproof, secured solution.
Any words from Vishram or Neville?
What Franck said is entirely true in terms of design. Normally, your current devices before security, they were designed in a normal design. Like normal, you have like chip, then you build your drivers, then you build operating system, and so on. But when people realize that it could be compromised, it could be replicated. So now you had to actually think about how to actually retrofit the whole solution from a security perspective. Now, there are a lot of things that you need to change. Especially, for example, as Franck said, you need to change the whole chip there. Of course, means the whole design changes here. On top of that, if you're going to provide drivers, now you should provide signed drivers, which cannot be changed just like that. On top of that, you're going to build secure operating system. On top of that, you're going to build secure applications. So, of course, if you're thinking by security, the whole design should start from the bottoms up. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
I feel like I'm going to put the cake in the oven and then put the icing on the top now. But I've got one here just cooked for you right now. So we talk from the inception right through, secure by design. Who remembers NT40? Who's a Windows Microsoft person? Yeah, okay. What was the issue with NT? Microsoft got over the scalability. People said Microsoft wasn't scalable. And then suddenly they became insecure. That was their major problem with Windows NT. What did they do? They went back to the drawing board to get security by design. They went back to their code base, right back to their code base, and looked at their coding practices and then how they would take that operating system right through. Now, we still have vulnerabilities in Microsoft, and we have as many vulnerabilities in Linux and all that, but they went back to the drawing board to do that. Now, I'm going to give you a case study that we've just finished doing in New Zealand around a massive IoT/OT implementation. So this is Waterfall, a tunnel inside New Zealand, links the airport to the city. It is a IoT marvel. And everything is enabled nowadays, which frightens everyone because we're taking telemetry data from everything. And instead of starting at the end, which we normally do and say, let's do a security review of the implementation, we started at the very beginning of the construction. And everything from cable ducts to IoT sensors to everything was looked at in a suspicious way. How can we compromise this? What can we do? What can a bad person do? Not just a piece of software and let's do a pen test. So my view is IoT, we've got to start at the beginning from the fab up, but we also have to look at the implementation. And before we implement, look at what bad things can happen as we deploy these things. And then finally, how do we fix it when something does go wrong? Because we're never going to imagine everything. So, yep.
Yeah, maybe just a very quick point, because it's not just about releasing the device onto the market. It's also about the product life cycle of the market, and also the ability to have the device being upgraded. So then comes this firmware upgrade or whatever it is, right, that is happening through the network. And this is also because we came across such cases actually. The device was supposedly secured, except that for that specific aspect, which is required in the management of the device through all this life cycle, where you need to have some upgrade, then this was also, bringing some new, let's say, a backdoor for hackers to come into and break the device. Yeah.
How confident do you think our service providers, maybe not Singapore, of course, out there, of upgrading all the firmware in their routers that are sitting on everyone's home devices today? How confident? So if they upgrade the firmware and reboot them and they don't come back, they could have 100,000 devices offline. How confident are we to actually run a security practice, update the firmware all the time when we know we're going to have failure rates out there. So we've got to improve our confidence rating of continuously upgrading and mitigating threats. And that's been the issue with a lot of devices that have been on the internet today. They've just been out of firmware levels.
So what can we do? What can we do to encourage people to actually, companies, manufacturers, to upgrade their system such that they actually patch the security vulnerability in the system?
Vote with our pockets, right? So this is back to the bad rap one, right? So if you get publicized, do you really want? We shouldn't be consuming products that are insecure.
Okay. We have a question over there.
Yes, I would actually like to add to that. We need to have maybe a way to make it painful. You know, like if you have a car, and let's say 6 years into its product. Yeah, if you have a car and you have it's 6 years into its product life cycle, and the brakes fail, you know, on many of them, the manufacturer has a huge problem and he has to do a recall. Why is that not the case with routers?
So, yeah, industry penalties for our industry.
So we come back to one question I want to ask. What is the role of regulation in regards to IoT? Vishram, do you want to start?
Of course. Okay. Now come my pictures. Okay. Normally, for example, like Loy earlier mentioned about asking about who are the manufacturers here. So, as a consumer, half of them, or maybe less than half of them, are educated enough to know what security is. For example, if your father buys a router and uses it in home to get the internet, does your father know what could happen with the compromised router? No, right? My father even doesn't know how to use a smartphone, so forget about him using the Wi-Fi router in a good way. So it's up to the government, or at least a regulatory committee who's approving that this kind of router should be allowed to use in the home, should put a regulatory standard that your router should be compliant with certain standards. That's why Singapore is right now, especially the idea is having SC18, it is a cybersecurity working group. They are developing the regulatory standard for IoT security in Singapore. Similarly, we already have ETSI, which is a European Telecommunications Standard Institute in Europe. They are also building the same level of regulatory committee to provide security to IoT devices. So government has a very good role. In fact, the role is very intricate in terms of providing security to the consumer itself who doesn't know what he needs. And this is very important.
Does it have teeth?
Doesn't know what their needs are. Not teeth, needs.
Teeth. No, teeth. Does the regulation have teeth?
Okay.
Cars, they'll tell the manufacturer to recall the device. Airplanes, they ground airplanes and airlines because of it. What about IT?
Okay.
What do our standards give us?
Okay, when you say about autonomous car, in terms of autonomous car, it's just not a car itself. The car has a lot of components, and each of the components are responsible for different things. For example, if you have a device as a firmware, the firmware security will come into the role. If you have communication, the communication standard will come into the role. If there are a lot of components involved, and each of the component has to follow a certain regulatory requirement. I'm not saying bring the whole car or recall the whole car. Recall a component of the car. But as a consumer, you won't know, right? So as a consumer, you have to go back to the car manufacturer. The car manufacturer will basically tell, dude, okay, fine, you have to actually recall the whole component. That's how the whole system should work.
So maybe, Neville, you may share with us your thought in terms of the role of regulation in regards to IoT.
It's a very hard one because we live in the world. There's a question over there too, Vincent. So it is a very hard one because we've lived in the world of the Wild West for 20 years now in IT. We've kind of done what we wanted to do. And I believe that the regulations will need teeth finally, because we're getting artificial intelligence, we're getting IoT, we're getting a lot of powerful technologies as a collective becomes very scary. So we've had regulation on cars and automobiles, we've had it on electricity providers, we've had it on. Once IT becomes a point of no return, i.e. critical infrastructure, and that's where I believe Singapore government see IT now as its critical infrastructure. It will have to have teeth. There will have to be damages and or control of the industry on the standards and the recall of the standard, of the product because of it. At the moment, IT goes, sorry, we've got a hole in our firmware. Here's the new one. You work out how do you get it out there, right?
Okay.
Yep.
So you mean to say that we need to have in our governments hackers that should be contributing to the education of the regulation body, or?
Not hackers. I'm saying that there needs to be a process where there are penalties for industry that are remiss in their security.
Yeah, but usually the regulation comes always afterwards.
Of course.
Okay, so we have a question over there.
Yeah, I actually like to make several comments, if you allow me, before my questions. One is about your Windows stuff. All the DLLs is unpatchable. I think you should know this by now, the most recent case. So second thing is about router. So when router has a problem, you don't wait for manufacturer. You don't wait for government. You fix it yourself. And I carry a router with me in my handbag everywhere. So if you like router and if you want to deal with router, you should become your own router administrator. It's like you get a cut, you get an elastic band and patch it. So this begins with education. So people must know how to do this, and router manufacturer has an obligation to put the user manual on a PFD file, that before you install your router, you should read this and learn how to fix this. So once it becomes a habit, it becomes your second nature. So no government involved, never. Router die 1 hour, you die. So you call government, when is he or she coming to fix for you? So the other problem with IoT is, I think you heard of this thing called Internet of Evil Things. So when all the security is not in place, it becomes very evil. Now my question here is, in the security space, we have, all this endpoint security and last mile and everything else, malware, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going through the list, okay? So the question is, there's a certain amount of practices in the security space, like CVE and all that kind of thing. So my question is, in IoT, do you document this kind of thing? So, because this is very important, so that hackers or security people, actually depend on which hat you are wearing, you are actually the same type of people, or pen tester. So you can go there and dig out everything and then try to solve this and update on a centralized repository so that it can benefit everybody. So I'd like to hear your view and your advice on how to tackle this kind of thing in the IoT space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neville, do you want to start?
Windows. It's the mother of all inventions, that Windows. I worked for Microsoft for 8 years and did security and management. It's a perennial problem for all operating systems, not just Windows, but there's many attack surfaces, and it's all about minimizing attack surface on all operating systems. Yeah. Now, which question to solve here? Routers. I think user education is absolutely one, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. We have a lot of people out there as consumers that really are oblivious to risk or technologies. However, that's the consumer world. If I was a heart surgeon, I'd say, well, maybe we should all know how to fix our own hearts. But we're oblivious. We eat badly, we don't exercise, and we carry on going. So that's IT, right? We use IT, we're oblivious, we do all the wrong things. And what we're trying to do in security is safeguard the ignorant as well as the well-informed.
in that education process also has to start with the device manufacturer themselves.
Yes.
That are moving through this digitalization process once again, because, you know, for instance, we can take an example, right? There's a company, it's a automotive supplier specialized in filters, right? They do like the best in class filters for all car manufacturer, right? And these guys, they want to start putting some sensors, intelligence, smartness into the device, right? But they have no whatsoever knowledge or understanding of what does it take to bring that kind of device right into a smart object. So they will have to go through that process. And how would these guys would be figuring out what is the exact things that I need to protect? What is the asset? What is the value here for me? And what is the kind of security level which I have to bring to that device to minimize the risk or avoid having problems afterwards once deployed in the field? So this education process is not just with the general public, right? But it's also with, in general, with customers and with their own product and the move to these IoT implementation.
I've only have about 7 minutes left, but I don't think we have answered your question yet, right?
Loy, I still have to say...
Hold on. Yeah, because I only have limited time now. I want to make sure that we really answer her question. Okay, and her question is that, what is our thought in regards to having a repository of incident, say that again? CBE, for, what does CBE stand for? Sorry? Say that again? Critical vulnerability. Okay. Yeah. A repository for the vulnerability in relating to IoT.
You already have this vulnerability. If you visit packetstormsecurity.org, which is a website which already monitors all the vulnerability that exists at this moment. It's called Zeroday attack. Any of yeah, exactly. Look, let me just explain the whole thing. All the Zeroday attacks are coming into the packetstormsecurity.org. You can find a list of all the vulnerabilities that exist right now, even zero-day attacks. Apart from that, coming back to your original router problem where you think that you can solve just by educating yourself, I agree that everyone should be educated. But 5 years ago, all your routers were secure with WEP, Wired Equivalent Privacy. The problem with the WEP was that it can be cracked in 4 hours. So even if you read the manual, you set up WEP, anyone can actually hijack your router in 4 hours.
The WEP technology is BS.
Sorry?
WEP is dead.
Exactly. But question comes
dead
in.
Since the day it started.
The question comes in, 5 years ago, router didn't have WPA to PSK. They didn't have it. So how would you, as a user, will know which to use? Because your router doesn't even support WPA to PSK. You can't do anything there. You have to rely on the manufacturer to provide that level of security so that you can configure it as a user. So there, the Internet Consortium started working with the wireless router to provide that level of security because people realize that WP is not secure. People can compromise it. So I agree that you have to educate yourself. But there's an important part, knowing that which all security is provided by the device manufacturer or by the consortium itself, which can be regulated by a regulatory standard, which is a very important part.
So with that, I want to close this session because time is running out. So I just want to close it for each and every one of you. Maybe tell me what are the 2 things you want to leave behind for the audience who have spent some time here with us. Maybe Neville, do you want to start first?
I think going right back to the first comment that I made, I think IoT is something that's a phenomenon, and the phenomenon is something because we're looking for telemetry data, we're looking for insight, we're looking for low-cost devices, we're putting them on the internet versus putting them inside our enterprise. So we need to look at that perspective. There's a lot of moving parts. It's not all solved yet. So the thought pattern here, tread warily, educate yourself, and make sure that as you're looking at IoT and the benefits, also look at the rollout strategy of your security with it as well.
Thank you. That's more than 2 points, but never mind. Vishram?
If you're buying any IoT product, just make sure that you have secured it of course, go through the brochure to see what kind of security is provided. Make sure you don't use default username and password. Use a secure one. Apart from that, look into the standard they are following, and make sure is the right standard. Can someone, if someone has already compromised that standard or not? Just make sure that. And demand for security. That's very important. If it does not exist, ask the product manufacturer, I need this form of security. I don't care how you give me, just ask for it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Frank?
I'm not sure. I have 2 points actually. I think that, like we mentioned multiple times, it's this security aspect is all about understanding the risk and how to manage the risk, right? And for that, you have also obviously to rely on the best-in-class kind of solutions or product that are available out there, and to take the right support from industries to be able to bring the device and the solutions secured, right?
Thank you, panelists. And I apologize that we cannot answer all the questions. And I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to spend with us this afternoon. IoT indeed provide a lot of challenges for us going forward. I hope we have more chance to talk about it in future session. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening ahead. Bye-bye.